optimism doesn't mean that you think nothing's going to go wrong. It means that you can have an optimistic attitude. You can expect the best in the long term over time, and also expect that there will be setbacks that you'll be able to work through. That if this is truly the right thing for you, that ways will be presented for you to work through the setbacks so that you can reach your goals over time. This 14-day mental health series is to honor those whose lives have been touched by mental illness. And it's in response to a friend of mine who recently died of suicide. I wish to give hope to those who are struggling, because there is always hope. Welcome to the Joyful Family Podcast, where we explore how to nurture our relationships, communicate in ways that we feel heard and seen, and create joyful family relationships that last.
We're your hosts,
Vauna
and Roland. Join us on this joyful adventure called family.
Housel said, "Optimism is a belief that the odds of a good outcome are in your favor over time, even though there will be setbacks along the way." And if built into your optimistic plan is the expectation of some setbacks, then when those setbacks occur, then they won't be devastating or detrimental to being able to move forward in your plan. I remember when we had 3 kids at the time and we were living in a 3-bedroom townhouse. That was adequate until we had another baby. And then when I was pregnant with our 5th baby, I said to my husband, we have to move before we have this baby because we just don't have a place to put him once he is born. I got really frustrated throughout this pregnancy as it was clear that just wasn't going to happen. And he was actually almost 2 years old by the time we really were able to buy a house. And when that happened, things fell into place so perfectly. We had a lot of setbacks. We had a lot of complications that made the process really drawn out. And then when we finally did have things happen, my husband applied for the loan. And then the loan officer went on vacation for 2 weeks. So nobody even processed our loan application for about 2 weeks. And then he got home from vacation and processed our application. And he called us and let us know the amount that we'd been approved for. And so I immediately contacted a realtor and we started looking for a house to buy. And we had a pretty big set of criteria of what we needed due to the size of our family. And we had a lot of must-haves, and we had some, I really hope we can have this, but it's not going to be a deal breaker. And our realtor sent me 3 properties. And of them, actually, only one of them looked reasonable for us. And we went and looked at that house the next morning after we'd received the approval. And ironically, it was the perfect house for us. It had everything that we had to have in a home. And it also had every single one of the, I really hope our house can have this. And so even though it felt like there were so many setbacks that led to us having our own home, and I got really frustrated along the way because I didn't understand this principle at the time. But ultimately, it led to us having the perfect home for us, buying it at the perfect time in terms of what the market was doing and what we could afford to give us the best option for the amount that we had to spend. So as you're going throughout your life and you have these plans and these goals, there may be things that feel like they get in the way. But remember that optimism doesn't mean that you think nothing's going to go wrong. It means that you can have an optimistic attitude. You can expect the best in the long term over time, and also expect that there will be setbacks that you'll be able to work through. That if this is truly the right thing for you, that ways will be presented for you to work through the setbacks so that you can reach your goals over time. And as you're working toward your goals, pay attention to the open doors, the doors that open for you, because sometimes we're so busy banging on a closed door that we neglect to see the open doors in front of us. And so be willing to surrender yourself to the process and to the learning and to the growth and the things that can happen when we accept what's coming for us instead of trying to plow our way through to something that isn't necessarily meant for us. So it's really important to examine, is this thing that I'm working toward ultimately what's in my highest good? Is this the thing that ultimately is going to be good for me? And ask yourself, am I banging on a door that isn't meant to be opened for me? And be willing to look around and find the other doors that are open. There were many times in my life that I wanted things to work out a certain way, and I had this plan, and I wasn't very flexible about how I wanted that plan to play out. And as I learned to become flexible, and as I learned to work with things instead of fight against things, then I found that the process became much, much easier and much less stressful, because if you can surrender to the process, you will find a flow, and you'll flow in and out, and things will come in. Miracles will occur that will allow furthering of your goals. So in your endeavor to be an optimistic person, and if you don't consider yourself an optimistic person, maybe it's time to re-examine that and see if you're willing to be. It's okay to say, I've struggled with optimism, but I'm willing to learn. Optimism is being willing to look for the rainbows. It's finding the silver lining. It's knowing that everything's going to be okay in the end, even though it might feel complicated now. And keeping a positive attitude, knowing that everything requires some work and is worth overcoming the hurdles. I challenge you to be more optimistic in the way that you know that you're not just expecting everything to be blissful at the moment, but to be willing to look at that in the long term, things will work out in the end, even if there are setbacks at the time. Thanks for listening to the Joyful Family Podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, share, and leave a review. Follow us on Instagram at Vauna Bird Family Coach and Roland Bird Author. Learn more about our work at vaunabird.com. Stay tuned. We're looking forward to sharing more with you next week.